The future of audio engineering and digital recall. Now, so basically, I came up with something about a year and a half ago, and I approached various different companies and I said to them, look, this is something you need to do. And some of them may pick it up and some of them may do it. But I wanted to do this video because I want more companies to do this. This is such a good idea. So I wanted to share the idea with, let's say, YouTube, and hopefully certain developers will see this and go, oh, you know what, that is actually a good idea. And, in the comments, let's create a discussion. Is it actually a good idea? Because I think it is a phenomenal idea. And like I said, I came up with it about a year and a half ago. And actually the reason I want to do this video as well is because what I don't want to do, or don't want to happen, is for one of these companies to release the idea and release their products with this idea implemented into it and then go, we've come up with a revolutionary idea. No, Paul came up with a revolutionary idea, told you about it, and then you released it. So the idea is this. Now, the best way to explain it is, imagine if a company like SSL brought out a digitally recallable SSL Fusion. Now, you had an SSL Fusion that was a piece of hardware, fully analog, with digital recall. We'd all love that, right? Now, they also can bring out an emulation. So if they then brought out an emulation of this same SSL Fusion that was, let's say, 95% as close as possible to the hardware. But here's the idea, and here's where it gets interesting, is now if you have a piece of hardware that is 100% accurate to the hardware and a plugin that is 95% accurate to the hardware, you can tell them apart when you're A/Bing against them, but in the grand scheme of a mix, can you really tell them apart? So the one thing that I thought was the big difference between using a plugin and using a piece of hardware is getting hands-on with the piece of hardware. It's far more enjoyable to be hands-on with that piece of hardware. Hence why, that's why I spent so much money on the Avid S4, because I want to be hands-on. Whenever I'm using a plugin, I want to be hands-on. So this concept I came up with was, if let's say we've got an SSL Fusion and it's digitally recallable and we have a plugin that is exactly the same. Now, what if that plugin could be controlled by our piece of hardware? And it is so simple to do. Now, you could have, let's say, the SSL Fusion on the mix bus. That's your hardware version. Then on every channel, you could have a plugin instance that is 95% accurate to the hardware. Slight difference, but it's pretty much there. Then what you do is, anytime you select a plugin, the hardware dials change. So it's just the ring lights around the each of the knobs changes to exactly where it is on the plugin. Then you use the hardware to control the plugin that is the plugin emulation. Then if you click onto the hardware version, you're then controlling the piece of hardware. Then if you click on, let's say, a vocal bus, now you're controlling the vocal bus. But ultimately what's happening here is you're using the hardware of your piece of hardware that is analog, that is your one piece, and that is ultimately controlling the plugins. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is genius. If a company came out with that and they could implement this into their products, it would add so much value to that one product, because you're not only just getting a great piece of hardware that is digitally recallable. We all love that. We all want that. But you're also getting, and it's very easy for them to do, is you're also getting a plugin controller. And now, arguably, you could have the analog piece of hardware. Say you had 50 channel mix and you were doing a 50 channel mix and you had 50 channels, 49 channels of plugins, and one channel was the hardware. Now, arguably, the one channel that's hardware, you may not even be able to tell which one is the hardware. So you could just randomly put one in there, and now you feel like you're using that piece of hardware on every one of those instances. Now, let me know, but I think if more manufacturers picked this up and did this, I think it would be huge, and I'd love it. Because imagine having all this hardware. Like, what do I have in here? The only thing I think that's got digitally recall. I think the only thing is the SSL bus comp. But if companies then did a very faithful analog emulation of their hardware, and a lot of companies, especially companies like Alicia, they've got good plugin emulations. If they brought out their kind of digitally recallable range, which is going to be a thing in 2025, if they had digitally recallable versions of their plugins as well, and you could use them both, that would be something special. And that's where I think we'll end up. I don't know if that will happen in 2025, but it will probably at some point. I think a few manufacturers will watch this video and look at the comments and they'll go, "Oh, do you know what? I think that's a good idea." And look, I like to work with companies and I like to give them feedback and I like to give them kind of unique ideas that they're not already doing, and then they run with them. Plenty of companies have done it. A lot of them give me credit for it. Some don't, which is why I wanted to do this video first, because I came up with this about a year and a half ago. And I've told a few people about it, quite a few companies about it. And I know in 2025 that someone most probably will start running with it. And it's a really good idea. It's something I want to see. And if I want to see it, I'm sure lots of others do. So let me know in the comments, and let the manufacturers know in the comments just what you think of this idea, because it is going to be huge.